Hi, in this video, I'm going to show you how to do the extra credit regression activity. This activity is in two parts. There's a link to it on the home page, so if you just click on regression, it'll actually bring you to this screen. This is part one. It's a tutorial on how to use Desmos. It's not automatically graded, so I'll just enter in the grades for everybody who has tried this. At the end of the semester, you'll get full credit just for trying. It's not right or wrong. But to get started, just click on join. And you can sign in with your Google account, and if you do that, if you want to edit it or go back to it, you can do that. Alternatively, you can just continue without signing in, and that's fine too. Make sure whichever method you choose that you use your real name, or at least the name that appears in Canvas. This way I can give you credit for doing this activity. So I'm just going to put in test student for myself because obviously I don't really want credit for this activity. So if you look in the upper right, this is a 7-page, essentially slideshow that you can interact with. So there's 7 sheets that you want to look at. The first is just a video that shows you what to do. And you can watch that video, or alternatively, if you watch this video, I think you'll get the idea of what to do. But it just shows you how to use Desmos to do a technique called regression, which is all about fitting a line or a curve through a data set. So basically, you can create the equation of y being a function of x. All right, so let's pretend we watched that video and move on to the next. And this first part is just to kind of get the idea that if you're looking at a scatter plot, you're going to want to tell the computer what type of regression technique you want to fit, what kind of model you want to fit to the data. And as we see here, exponential would look like that, linear would be straight, but that U-shape, which would fit the data really well, is quadratic, so that's the model we should pick. All right, so let's keep going through the slides. Keep in mind that this was fake data, so the points fit perfectly into this quadratic function. That's not typical. Typically, you'd have to, there'd be some error, there'd be some fluctuations. You wouldn't be able to fit the model perfectly. All right, so this is the idea here. You want to, this is what the screen's going to look like. This is how Desmos estimates models for you. So you tell it, like, I want to relate y to x's. The first variable is called y1, the second variable is called x1, and we want to estimate the coefficients a, b, and c, and these are the numbers down here. So the equation that this is telling you is that it's y equals, well, it's ax squared plus bx plus c. So a is 3, b is 2, and c is -7. So that's the model we're actually fitting. So we fit the model in Desmos using this little tilde character, and we use y1 and x1 for our variables to indicate these are lists. You'll see what I'm saying in a moment. But when we actually write out the model, we'd of course write it with y's and x's instead. And we'd fill in the letters. Okay, and we use an equal instead of a tilde. Tilde is for estimation, equals is for writing out the equation. All right, let's move on to the next part. And you can click share with class. All right, so the way you enter in a data set into Desmos is you use this table feature, and you see how it's calling the x variable x1 and the y variable y1. That's why we model it that way. If you want to insert the table yourself, you can copy and paste a table in from Excel, or you can click this add item here and put in a table. This table is already created, so we don't want to do anything else. So this is the first box. You can see 1. This is where the data table is. In the box beneath it, in box number 2, you're going to type exactly this: y1 tilde a e to the k x1. So let's type it just like that. So y1, and notice it automatically made the subscript, and it's pulling up that list of y1 values. Then tilde, which for my computer, I just hold down the shift button and hit the button right above the left tab, so like the upper left corner of my keyboard. So y1 tilde a, so it's going to model this, it's going to create this coefficient a that it's going to estimate. E, which is that natural number. Exponent, and I just, to do an exponent, I usually just use the caret symbol, which is shift 6. But alternatively, you can use this keyboard feature and use the A to the B command and do the same thing. And I'm going to type k x1, and again, it automatically makes the one an exponent. And there you go. And as you see, this fits the model. It won't make any difference for this data set, but typically you're going to want to check this box for log mode, and that will make the homework answers correct. So there's multiple methods for estimating exponential functions. To get the questions correct in the homework part of this, you're going to click log mode. All right, so that's all it is. So our model is going to be y equals 2, because that's our a, e to the 1 times x. All right, so what was the model? Our model was, let's go down here again, it was y equals 2 times e to the 1 times x. So that's our model, y equals 2e to the x. And yes, it was an exponential model. I saw some of you wrote that. All right. Next, fit an exponential model. All right, so let's do that. So same thing we just did again, but this time it's a real data set, so we're going to get kind of uglier numbers. So we're going to get y1 tilde a e to the kx1. And again, I'm going to enable that log mode since that's what the homework will be expecting. And so that means our model is y equals 18.7 e to the 0.2445 x1. One thing to note is on some of the homework questions, it might ask you for, let's say, the answer to correct to, let's say, 6 decimal places. And as you see here, it only gives you a correct to 4 decimal places. But actually, there's more decimal places stored in the software. If I just type in A, you can see that A is actually 18.728804013. So in other words, you can get more precision just by asking Desmos, well, what actually is the value of A that you estimated? And it'll give you a rounded value, but rounded to a lot more decimal places. All right, next step. And you can see here, it actually wrote out the model. And then you can just answer the rest of these questions. One of the cool things actually in Desmos, let me show you this very quickly, is I can store this as a function to make estimations. One of the really cool things about Desmos is if you want to use, if you want to estimate a function, you can actually name a function and then just quickly plug in values using the f of x notation. So let's say I decide to call this function f of x. So what I can say is that f of x equals, and let me just type out the model. Remember, my model is supposed to be y equals a e to the kx. So I'm going to write f of x equals a e to the kx. So now I created this new function. It's the same function I've been estimating before, but I named it f. So if I want to find out what f of 1 is, I just type f of 1. So that's what y is when x is 1, or if I want to find y is when x is 2, I just plug in 2, etc. So this is really cool. So if you want to make multiple estimations, you can use this. You can name your function, write in the equation of your function, and then plug in x values. All right, so let's go to some of the homework questions. So part 2 of this assignment. Let's go to my math lab to access part 2. Click on Open My Lab and Mastering, and then click on Assignments. Alternatively, you could click on just the link inside the gradebook, or the list of assignments, rather. Next, just click on Assignments, and scroll all the way down until you get to the regression. It should be the last one on the list. Okay. Because I'm doing this after the due date, I'm going to click Improve My Score. And I'm not going to go over all these questions, but let's look at a few of them. Let's start off with question number 10. I think that's one of the more interesting ones. So I'm just going to do a side-by-side window here. I'm going to put the homework question on the left. And then I'm going to open up a Desmos screen on the right. So I'm just going to go to desmos.com and then click on Calculator. All right, So it's telling me that this is my data table. This is my data that I want to enter in. So I want to insert that into Desmos. Then I want to fit this regression line to the data, and then I want to use the regression line to make an estimation for what y is when x is 89. All right, so let's do that. So first step first, I want to enter in the data. I'm going to click on Insert Table, and it automatically puts in the table and names my variables x and y, but x1, y1. All right, so I'm going to do 65, 68, and 79 for the x's, and I just hit enter to get to the next line. The y's are 68, 70, and 86. All right, next I want to fit a straight line to this data. Instead of using y, use y1. Instead of using x, use x1. And instead of equals, use that tilde symbol. Otherwise, you write the equation just the way it's written. So I'm going to write y1 tilde mx1 plus b. All right, so this is the model. Our model is basically y equals, instead of m, you're going to write 1.33, x plus, well, minus 19.411. It says to round to 5 decimal places, so we're going to have some issues with the b, but remember we have that trick where we can actually type in the letter, and it will tell me what the b is. All right. So let's enter in these numbers. So we have y equals m is 1.33129, x minus 19.41104. All right, and then we want to estimate what the student's final exam score is. All right, so we have our model where f of x is equal to 1.33129x minus 19.41104. And I want to find out what the final exam score is if the midterm was 89. So I want to find what f of 89 is, and I get 19.07. It says to round to 2 decimal places, so that sounds great. Quick note here, it will mark me correct, I hope, but technically you're not really supposed to use regression to make estimations outside of the domain of your data set. So keep in mind that even though we use this technique, we're not psychics. We can't totally predict what's going to happen for a final exam score when somebody scored a midterm exam that's completely not in the realm of what we looked at. But anyway, it's still interesting that we can use past information to make a prediction if it follows the same trend. All right, let's try a few more questions. Let's look at this one real quick. It wants us to try to estimate this. Notice that it's asking us to do a quadratic function, so we're talking about y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Here's my information. Let's enter this in as a table. Notice now that it's doing x2, y2 because x1 and y1 were already taken. No big deal, we'll just have to keep that in mind. All right. Then we want to model this using a quadratic function. So y2 tilde ax, oops, we don't want to use a, well, you know what, let me just to be safe, let me remove all this other stuff. This way I don't accidentally duplicate letters we've used before. All right, so y2 tilde ax2, but we have to square it, plus bx2 plus c. So there's our estimations. It says to round to 3 decimal places. All these numbers are given to 3 decimal places or more, so we're good there. So it's going to be 0.156 x squared. Oops, x was squared is already in there. Make sure you actually follow the directions on the screen. This is going to be a minus 5.625. And the last is 75, and hopefully this works. All right, fantastic. Let's do 1 or 2 more questions. Oh, it wants us to estimate the braking distance when when it's 15 miles an hour. Oh, sorry. Use the function to estimate the braking distance of a car that's going 50 miles an hour. Okay, so we just have to plug in 50 and see what happens. All right, so I'm going to say f of x equals 0.156 x squared plus, minus 5.625x plus 75. I'm just entering in the model, and I want to make an estimation when x is 50. So I get 183.8. This is round to one decimal place. All right, and then, and this is that warning that I was giving you on the last one, that we don't really want to make predictions when it's out of the domain of your data set. So this is what I was talking about, that we don't really want to make predictions outside of the domain. So it's good for numbers more beyond just 20, 40, and 60, but make sure you're only making predictions between 20 and 60. That's the only way you're going to get a reliable answer. All right. All right, let's look at question number 2. Would be very similar, just a bigger data set. Your x variable is t, your y variable is h, but you're going to do it the same way. Let's move on to question number 3. This one I think is a little bit trickier because it's a more complicated model. They do have this feature here where you can copy the data table. You can copy it to a clipboard, which works. So I'm just going to press Control-C to copy it. Alternatively, you can open up in Excel to get a better look at it. I'm going to close all these extra things up. All right, and I'm going to press Control-V to paste. And notice it pasted the data in. The X column is the time and days, and the Y column is that bottom row there, which is the number of rumors heard, N. I want to fit this model here, so I'm going to say Y1. Okay, I want to use here, right, where C is on top, and on bottom I have 1 plus AE to the negative BT. Oops, but instead of T I should use X1. Be careful of that. I often make that mistake. All right, and so these are the numbers. You want to round to 3 decimal places. That should work out just fine. All right, let's plug these in. And while I'm at it, I'll call this N of T. And you can see what it looks like. All right, so N of T, so C was 26.356. A was 152.041. And B was 0.885 if you round. And it says estimate the limiting value. Well, remember the limiting value for a logistic function is just the number at top, which is 26.35. So it would say approximately 26 students. You can't have fractional students hearing a rumor. And then, etc. You just kind of continue on the part, and you can use it for estimations as well. All right, I hope that was helpful. As always, just let me know if you have any questions, and have fun with this.